Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it finds you well. My name is John, and I'm an author. And in what I'm starting to call Talking Tuesday, I'm here to just talk at you a little bit about some of my interests and things that inspired me or shape who I am, both as a person and a writer. I talked last week about how I got into fantasy in general, particularly my parents reading Tolkien to me at a very early age, The Hobbit in particular. And this week, one of these videos, I will delve into Lord of the Rings and my absolute, worship of Tolkien's whole legendarium. But I'm gonna decide to take a little detour this week into probably the second, at least to my memory, sort of big geek nerd, whatever you want to call it, love I have, and that is for Star Trek. Um, my first experience with Star Trek was, I don't know 100% for sure, but around about when I was 4. My parents either decided to watch Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock on TV, or they rented it from a video store. This would have been in the early 90s, so yes, video stores are still very much a thing. Probably figuring that I don't know particular if there was a particular reason why they decided to watch it or rent it, other than just in general, and their own enjoyment of Star Trek. They're not nearly massive fans like I am, but I think they both like it just fine. They might correct me when they see this, but probably assuming that being 4-ish years old, that I probably wasn't going to pay that much attention or be that interested in it. And there's nothing. And also figuring that it's Star Trek, that there's nothing particularly going to be bad or objectionable in it. But it turned out that I was absolutely glued and riveted to the TV the entire time watching this movie, and just absolutely like became obsessed with it. To the point where there's if you've seen Star Trek 3, there's nothing. It's probably there's a few things in it. It's probably not the best movie for a 4-year-old, but also there's also nothing, there's no like graphic violence, and certainly being Star Trek, there's certainly no sex or anything that'd be particularly problematic. Just a little intense for a 3-year-old, but a 4-year-old. But they decided not to turn it off. And from what I remember, being a little kid, is I remember them begging them for a long time to see it again before they finally relented. Probably wasn't all that long, to be honest. It's just, it's been 32-ish years since that point, being that I'm 36 now. And also the perception of time as a kid is always, things always feel a lot longer. Um, so yeah, from there I started watching, they started introducing me to, when they would come on TV, I think, and I would start, they would buy me videos from like video cassettes from the store. That was always been one of the things I purchased. What I would love to purchase when I went to the mall. And, this is a sentence that some of you might not understand. Makes me feel a little old, if I'm being perfectly honest. Is we go to the mall, either Northgate or Forest Fair. I'm not sure either still exist any longer, near Cincinnati, Ohio, near where I grew up, and at a place called Suncoast Video. Um, would buy cassettes of individual Star Trek episodes. At the time, that would have really just been Star Trek: The Original Series and The Next Generation. One of my aunts and one of my uncles are both big fans of Star Trek, so I started to get Star Trek themed gifts. They'd start getting that for me for like Christmas and birthdays, Star Trek themed gifts, Star Trek episodes. It was just a random smattering because the video store, it was always inconsistent what they had, and I would pick up ones that'd be interested in. I think one of the first, some of the ones I remember very clearly buying, on cassettes in those early days is from the original series, uh, Errand of Mercy, Trouble with Troubles, Friday's Child, Space Seed, I think. I don't know. It sort of all blends together when I got, when I got them. And I, watch the Star Treks on TV. I would say probably as a kid, I was comfortably most into, the original series, and I love the, love the original series movies. I remember my parents got, it's like the 20th or no 25th anniversary like celebration where it was just them talking about the production and narrating it and the movies. They eventually introduced me to all the other movies. I definitely had all six of the original series Star Trek movies um, on VHS. Love them, watch them all the time. I think they took me to see, was introduced a little bit to Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think they might have taken me to see Star Trek Generations when it came out, but I definitely remember very clearly that Star Trek First Contact was I believe, the first PG-13 movie that my parents took me to see, and unlike what was generally their policy for things like that, even for watching like PG-13 movies when I was that young, I would have been 9 or 10 at the time, 9 at the time, I think, if I remember correctly when that came out. It was Star Trek. I loved it. They just took me to see it. I don't think they mattered too much about it. And then, yeah, I've been collecting it ever since. I remember very clearly starting to watch Star Trek Voyager when it came on TV. I remember clearly watching that with my mom, watching through that, and then eventually watching it on my own on a channel, UPN, I think, that got pretty poor reception. So it was kind of a challenge to watch it sometimes. But I think I missed some episodes, maybe like a year or two because of the difficulty of getting the UPN channel. But I watched a good chunk of Voyager as it was actually airing. Same thing, I sort of was coming in and out due to like reception issues with the channel it was on. I watched a decent chunk of Star Trek Enterprise as it came out. When I got into college, I started, when things like Netflix and streaming stuff started to become available, I started watching actually properly through all of the series, and particularly a friend of mine introduced me to Deep Space Nine, which still might be my favorites of the Star Trek series. If it keeps going the way it has been, I think that might be beaten by Strange New Worlds, honestly. But because I absolutely adore that show, and yeah, ever since then, I love I've watched. I think at this point, with the exception of the animated series, which is hard to find, and I don't think I've ever watched any full episodes of that. Um, and I've only watched about a third, maybe a half of the first season of Prodigy. I need to catch it up. It's really, I know it's technically a show aimed for kids, but it's really a good all ages, and it's really quite a smart show from what I've seen so far. So I'm looking forward to checking that out and watching that more, and finishing that at some point. But yeah, it's very impactful to me because that's always been one of the major things that's been in my head, is a lot of the ideas. I mean, just the utopian ideals of Gene Roddenberry. I absolutely love. I mean, some of his thoughts about the importance of diversity and acceptance. That's really kind of try how I personally try to live my life. That's sort of Roddenberry's ideal, and that he gave to the Vulcans is the the IDIC, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That's really how I live my life, is try as much as possible to unlearn prejudices and embrace, diversity and diverse perspectives whenever I can. I'd say for my personal, and then, I've absolutely, being an adult, I've really loved all the new Star Trek that's come out. We've been so lucky and so spoiled. I love Discovery. I love Star Trek Picard. Strange New Worlds is just unbelievably phenomenal. Um, just it has the feeling, it beautifully melds sort of the sense of like exploration and wonder and travel of the original Star Trek, but still bringing in some modern sensibilities. It's entirely possible that I might, at some point, sort of talk a little bit more about, the individual series and some of my thoughts on them, because they all have their strong and their weak points. Whether that be, down episodes, or a couple places where the premise was great but the execution was kind of lacking. I mean, there's some absolutely fantastic episodes of the original series, but it's hard to watch some of the episodes with the very, very rampant 60s sexism that's in there. It makes it a little uncomfortable to watch some of those episodes. Um, but yeah, I'd say, throw it out there, still probably Deep Space Nine is my favorite, but Strange New World is catching up to it, and if it continues the streak, I think that might become, still be my favorite. I don't have ranking them as difficult. I really don't have any of them that I dislike. Again, I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses, which I certainly might talk about in a future video. Um, Favorite movie. This is going to be very typical, but I have no shame in this. Favorite movie. In fact, one of not just my favorite Star Trek movie, but one of my favorite movies. Period. Is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It's just like a really well constructed like story and tale. It's great writing. It's great acting. It's the effects, even we're more than 30 years later, no, more than 40 years later, good lord. In fact, I just recently, and I was so excited to do this, for the 40th anniversary. They were doing showings through the Fathom Events program, so I got a chance to see it on the big screen, which, obviously, being coming out 5-ish years before I was born, I never did see it on the big screen. Was really, really awesome. The effects still hold up beautifully. Um, I'm not sure effectively, some of the typical questions. You know, I'd say probably I love so many of the characters. For a long time, probably my favorite captain was Picard. I mean, just it's a great character, a phenomenal performance by Patrick Stewart. He really does a lot making those shows. Though again, Anson Mount's Christopher Pike for season 2 of Discovery, and then Strange New Worlds might be catching up to him. It's just a brilliantly realized and brilliantly written character, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my little ramble about Star Trek. Let me know if you would like to hear more. I've drifted a little bit more towards, I've got some science fiction, linking it back to writing. I've got some science fiction stuff, stories rattling around in my head. They're a bit more, as I've gotten older, they're a bit more, for lack of a better, real world and less utopian than Star Trek. A little bit more on the lines of like, some of the ideas I have are a little bit more in lines with things like, The Expanse or Dune or The Foundation. Really great series by Isaac Asimov. But Yeah, that's how it, just to link it back. That's how it links into my writing. But yeah, that's a little bit about my just absolute love and worship of Star Trek. If you'd like to hear more, you have any questions, please let me know. If you'd like to see more videos of stuff for me discussing or breaking down some of the individual series of Star Trek, I would be happy to do that. I could talk about that for literal hours, probably. Not probably, definitely. But yeah, so to finish with the usual plugs, it'd be awesome if you were to buy my books. We have my first book, The Shadow of the Past, and second, and The Sunburned Red. Both of those are available on Amazon.com for purchase or rental, either in Kindle or softback, and actually on The Sunburned Red as a hardcover version. Links to that are below, as well as links to my socials and my personal website, which I need to do a blog post or two and do some updates there at some points. But yeah, that's a Talking Tuesday here for me. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Check out my video on whichever side it ends up on. Check out my video for talking about my love of fantasy, and check out anything else on my channel. Feels appropriate since I've been talking about Star Trek to end by saying, I hope you all have a great day and live long and prosper.